It's time for Warhammer. In this battle report, the Dwarfs take on the Daemons. This is game number 2 of our 6-player 1,000 point tournament. After each team faces off against each other once during this regular season, there will be a double elimination playoffs. So let's look at the armies for this battle, starting with the Dwarfs. And this is the Brimstone clan, led by Thane Rumar Trollbane. He wears medium armor and carries an extra hand weapon. He comes in at 67 points. Next, 15 Quarrelers, light armor, crossbows, and despite what you see, they don't have a full command, just a champion. They are 190 points. And then 20 Warriors, light armor, hand weapons, shields, and a full command. They are worth 210 points. Next, 10 Longbeards, great weapons, medium armor, and a full command. They are worth 170 points. Also, 10 Hammerers, great weapons, medium armor, and a full command. 180 points. Also, 10 Slayers, 2 hand weapons, no armor, full command, and they are 140 points. And finally a Bolt Thrower, which is 45 points. The grand total for the army is 1,002. Here's the breakdown. Now over to the Daemons. This is the Daemon host from Burning Skull Valley. They are led by a herald named Claw. He has a Hellblade and is worth 180 points. He has been upgraded with Venom attacks and the Locus of Wrath, which will give him hatred. There are 2 identical units of 5 Flesh Hounds, each with unit champions. They are each worth 115 points. There are 2 identical units of 15 Bloodletters, with full command and Hellblades. They are each worth 225 points. And then a unit of 10 Chaos Furies, which are worth 140. The entire army adds up to 1,000 points. The breakdown. Now let's look at the battlefield. This battle will be on a 4x8 table, and the terrain was set up by our club's random landscape generator. They rolled up a desert landscape, and the terrain was selected and placed randomly as you see here. There's a wall and a fence, and then there's a normal hill. In the center there's a pile of skulls. Farthest out there's some rocky outcrops, or what we call hoodoos, and then right in front of those is what we call Serpent Rock. Serpent Rock is a mystical monument with a known magical ability, and the rule is that the first unit with a unit standard that comes in base contact with Serpent Rock will gain +1 initiative and the choice between immunity to poison or poison attacks. And that magic ability remains in play until the unit standard is destroyed. And yes, that's a mystical monument that we invented that is a regular part of our terrain library. It's not something we invented just for this game. But there's no other magical terrain pieces on the battlefield. All those other ones are normal terrain. Let's move on to deployment. The Daemons set up on the side with the rocks, and then the Dwarfs on the side with the wall and fence. The Dwarfs are set up with the Warriors and the Longbeards in the center, the Slayers on the left flank, the Quarrelers on the right flank, the Bolt Throwers center left, the Hammerers center right, and the Thane is deployed with the Hammerers. The Daemons are clustered in the center in 2 tiers. Up front is a unit of Flesh Hounds and the Chaos Furies. And in the back are both Bloodletter units and another unit of Flesh Hounds. Claw is deployed with the unit of Bloodletters on the left. And the Daemons have 2 vanguard units, and they decide to move one of them. The front unit of Fleshhounds make a beeline for the left flank. They are hungry for first blood. So that completes our game setup. It's time for turn 1. Daemon's turn 1. Movement phase. Too far for charges. All units advance forward without marching. Those hoodoos in the center will force all the demon units to the flanks, except for maybe the Furies. We'll see what they do. Speaking of the Furies, they also take off into the air. They can remain in the air for several turns, as many as they like. The Bonepile Miniatures Club has put together our own set of flying rules, and we'll explain as we go, or you can look for a video on this channel, or look on our hobby blog at bonepileminiatures.com and find the explanation under the Rules Supplement tab. But that will end the movement phase. And then concerning the magic phase, we are not going to be using the Reign of Chaos table during this tournament, so there will also not be a magic phase. And since the Dwarfs don't have magic, there will be no magic phases during this entire game, just to make that clear. So this will finish up the Daemon's turn. We'll move on to the Dwarfs. No charges from the Dwarfs. All Dwarf units move forward, including the Bolt Thrower. And no units decide to take the hill. They're all staying on open terrain. And all targets are out of range for shooting. So this will end the Dwarf's turn. Back to the Daemons. All charges for the Daemons are still out of range, so on to the remaining moves. All Daemon units push forward. Both Fleshhound units march forward at full speed. The Fleshhounds in the front appear to be on a collision course with the pile of skulls. Without a sweat, the Chaos Furies flew over the hoodoos. They are not far behind the other unit of Fleshhounds. And the Bloodletters with the Herald are moving down the left flank. The other unit of Bloodletters are coming up the center behind those hoodoos, but I'm not sure why. The hoodoos are not a defensible position. They are impassable terrain. But this will be the end of the Daemon's turn. Going back to the Dwarfs. The Dwarfs have no charges to declare. Remaining moves. All units march forward, except for one, and that is the Bolt Thrower. It remains in place. It now has a target in range. So we'll finish up the movement phase and move into the shooting phase. This Bolt Thrower has a range of 48 inches. It will target the vanguard unit of Fleshhounds, but it is a long-range shot. They fire and they miss. No Fleshhounds hurt from that round. And that will end the Dwarf's turn. We'll move back to the Daemons. Turn 3. The Daemons have no charges to declare. For remaining moves. On the right flank, the Fleshhounds and the Chaos Furies continue marching forward at full speed. And then on the left flank, the Fleshhounds throw caution out the window and they have to leap over that pile of skulls. They pass their dangerous terrain check successfully and they are still on the hunt for some blood. And then Claw, the Herald, and his unit of Bloodletters are coming up behind them on the left flank, but they did not march. And then the Bloodletters in the center decide that they're done checking out those hoodoos and then reform facing the right flank. Maybe they were making sure that there were no dwarfs hiding in those rocks. Who knows? But that will end the Daemons' movement and their turn. So now we'll go back to the Dwarfs. Dwarfs turn 3. No charges to declare. for remaining moves. The Slayers marched down the left flank. The Bolt Thrower stayed in place. The Warriors also marched, even though sometimes it's hard to tell when the Dwarfs march. And then the Longbeards and the Hammerers sorted out who was going to be in front on the center right. But neither one marched. And then the Quarrelers also stayed in place. Shooting phase. The Bolt Thrower. Due to line of sight, it chooses a new target. Instead of the other Fleshhounds, it targets the Chaos Furies. But this unit is long range, and they are a skirmishing unit. Plus they flew at double speed last turn, so there's going to be 3 shooting penalties on the Bolt Thrower. So needless to say, the Bolt Thrower missed. But even if the Bolt Thrower did hit and wound, I don't think we would have allowed the Bolt to continue wounding in the extra ranks, since the unit is skirmishing. Next, the Vanguard Fleshhound unit is now in range of the Quarrelers. Crossbows ready. They fire 11 bolts. They manage 4 hits, and then 3 of those go through as wounds. The Fleshhounds will have a 6+ armor save and then a 5+ ward save. They managed to save 1 wound, and that was with the armor save. They only have 1 wound per beast, so that eliminates 2 of them. But since they are immune to psychology, there's no need for a panic test. The hunt will not stop until they're all dead. But that ends the shooting phase. The Quarrelers are the first to draw blood. That will end the Dwarfs' turn and we'll go back to the Daemons. Daemons turn 4. No charges to declare, but all units march forward. The Fleshhounds are closing the gap and leaving the Furies in their dust. And the Bloodletters will be the final wave on both flanks. But as you can see, the Bloodletters on the left flank came into base contact with Serpent Rock, so they will be granted the special bonuses. So Serpent Rock automatically grants the unit +1 initiative, so they will advance from initiative 4 to initiative 5. However, most of the Dwarfs are only initiative 2, so that initiative bonus won't have too much of an impact on the game. And then for the second bonus from Serpent Rock, the unit can choose between immunity to poison or poison attacks. But Daemons already have immunity to poison, so the only choice that they can make is poison attacks. And poison attacks allows that all to hit rolls of 6 make automatic wounds on the target. So add that on top of the fact that all these Daemons in this unit carry Hellblades, and that gives them the killing blow, which means that all to wound rolls of 6 are automatic wounds. So these Hellblades with poison attacks will prove to be extra dangerous. But if you remember, Claw, the Herald, already has poison attacks from an upgrade he purchased at the beginning of the game. So the Dwarfs can look forward to all this coming down the pike for them very shortly. And that will end the Daemons movement phase and their turn. So now we'll go back to the Dwarfs. Dwarfs movement phase. They have 1 charge to declare. On their left flank, the Slayers declare a charge on the Fleshhounds. And this would be a long charge for the Dwarfs. It is 9 inches, I believe. And in our club, our charge distances are a little shorter than you are probably used to. What we do is we roll 2d6, and then we take only the highest die rolled, and then add the M value. So the Slayers will charge, and the Fleshhounds will hold. So with a movement of only 3, the Slayers will have to roll a 6 in order to make the charge. And what do you know, they do roll a 6. And the Slayers will be the first Dwarf unit in combat. True to character. And the Slayers also pass their fear check. Remaining moves. The bolt thrower will inch forward. The quarrelers will stay in place. And then all the other dwarf units march forward. But the longbeards and the hammerers try to fan out a little bit. They are poised for action. Shooting phase. The quarrelers will target the small unit of flesh hounds, trying to thin them out a little more. So the quarrelers shoot 11 shots into the flesh hounds. They score only 3 hits, and then only one of those hits goes through as a wound. And then the flesh hounds are able to save that wound with their ward save. So there's no casualties for this turn. And then the bolt thrower did not bother to shoot this turn, and so now we'll move on to the combat phase. The Slayers will fight the Flesh Hounds. Both have an initiative of 4, so they will strike simultaneously. But since they charged, we'll start with the Slayers. They are at a disadvantage for weapon skill, and we counted up 16 attacks. The Slayers on the front row should all get 2 attacks, since they have 2 hand weapons, and then the ones on the second row should all get 1 attack, because supporting models only get 1, and then the champion gets 1 more. Let me know in the comments if we got that wrong. And so the Slayers rolled up 7 hits on the Fleshhounds. And then to wound, it'll be a strength 3 against toughness 4. But then the Slayers have a special rule where they can always wound on a 4+ unless the situation calls for something lower. So the Slayers roll and only score 1 wound. But then the Fleshhounds are able to get their ward save, resulting in no casualties for the Fleshhounds. Now they strike back. They will get 11 attacks, and they end up rolling 8 hits. And then they roll for wounds and they score 3. The Slayers have no armor save, but they do have a parry save. But they miss all of those saves. 3 final wounds on the Slayers. Combat resolution. Despite their boldness, the Slayers end up losing combat 3-2. The Bonepile Miniatures Club has a leadership, bonus, and penalty system based upon combat results. And so for this one, the Fleshhounds will gain 1 leadership and the Slayers will lose 1. And that's what those green chits are on the board next to the units. And those modify the leadership value of the unit throughout the game, and they can accumulate up to ±3 from their original value. But anyways, the Slayers will lose the combat, but they are unbreakable. So we can skip that part of the phase. This fight will continue into the next round. But this will end the Dwarfs' turn, and so we'll go back to the Daemons' turn. Daemons' turn 5. The small unit of Fleshhounds will declare a charge, but the Fleshhounds make an unpredictable move. Instead of taking the Quarrelers or the Hammerers straight on, they instead target the flank of the Longbeards. And that's a longer charge. We measured it at 14 inches. The Longbeards elect to hold. The Fleshhounds will need a 6 to get in. So they roll, and they get it. They also roll a 6. Just like the Slayers. Both teams are eager to get in the fight. And then the Longbeards pass their fear check. No other charges from the Daemons, and the 3 other units will all march forward. That ends the movement phase, and we'll move on to the combat phase. And the Daemons begin the phase with the battle on their right flank. Fleshhounds against the Slayers. This time the Hounds have the speed advantage, and will strike first. They still get to roll 11 attacks. And this time they land 7 hits. And then those 7 hits slice through and make another 4 wounds on the Slayers. Then the Slayers attempt their parry save, and they manage to score 1 parry save. But that will allow 3 final wounds to go through on their unit. Only 4 Slayers left, but they get to strike back. This time they get 9 attacks. They roll and they manage to score 5 hits, and then of those 5, only 1 makes a wound. Another bombed wound roll, and then the Fleshhounds fail both save rolls. They are down a hound. Combat resolution, and once again the Fleshhounds score 3, and the Slayers score 2. The Fleshhounds will gain a leadership, and the Slayers will lose 1. There will be no break test, and we'll move on to the next combat. The other Fleshhounds will make their flank attack into the Longbeards. And for this one, there's no need to belabor all the details because neither unit ends up putting a wound on the other. That's not what anyone was expecting. Not a bad move for those Fleshhounds though. But we'll go straight to combat resolution. So we counted this combat up as a draw, 2 against 2. That's how it was judged during the game. But let me tell you, this combat has given me a lot of grief in analysis while recording this video. So at first I thought, oh no, we forgot about the disruption rule. Since the hounds charged on the flank of the Longbeards, they should have caused disruption on the Longbeards unit, and that would have cancelled all their points for rank bonuses, which was 1 in this case. And that would have given the hounds the edge with a 2-to-1 combat result. So when I originally recorded the segment for this combat, that's what I explained. I said that in the game, we played with the draw result, but in reality I explained that the Longbeard should have been disrupted, and therefore the Fleshhounds should have really been the winners of this combat. But just as I was about to move on to record the next round of the game, I reread the disruption rule one more time. And that's when I realized that the Fleshhounds unit cannot cause disruption because they are too small. There's only 3 models. Disruption only works with bigger units. So then I had to change my analysis one more time and admit that the draw was the true result of that combat. But then I realized that I was making another mistake about this. I realized that the Longbeards have a musician and the Fleshhounds do not. Musicians have a tiebreaker rule for combat called Form on Me. And so then I realized that the Longbeards would have won this combat round, and that I was wrong again. And so this is the 3rd time I've had to change my analysis on this combat. But of course during the game we just proceeded with the draw result, not realizing our mistake. The Longbeards should have won this combat, and we'll see what kind of consequences that mistake may have on the game as we proceed. But even with that all said, I do want to share an opinion I have. As I look at this combat and I think about the Form on Me rule, the way that these hounds flanked the Longbeards, it seems to me like the Form on Me rule should have been cancelled too. And that's purely from a tactical perspective. The entire unit command, including the musician, are on the front rank of the unit, but there's no enemies there. They were flanked. Form on Me sounds like they're trying to rally the rank and file troops to push forward where their unit command is, which is the front rank, and not the side flank. And now if there had been even one enemy model on the front of the unit, I think the Form on Me rule would probably still apply. But where there's nothing up there, all the enemies are on the flank, I think it should cancel the Form on Me. But that's just my opinion. We are still going to continue to play the rule as it is written for the rest of this tournament, but that's something I think we're going to consider for maybe future iterations of our tournaments. Maybe the Form on Me rule should not apply in this situation. And if you have any thoughts about this, let me know in the comments what you think about this idea. But anyways, that was kind of a tangent, and we'll get back to the game But this does finish this combat and the Daemon's turn. So now we'll go back to the Dwarfs' turn. The Dwarfs begin round 5 by declaring a charge. Thane Rumar Trollbane will charge with his hammerers into the Fleshhounds. No need to roll for the charge distance in this case. They are so close together. And the hammerers don't need to roll for fear check, because the Thane is with their unit, and they have the King's Guard rule. For remaining moves, the warriors and the quarrelers both march forward, and then the bolt thrower stays put. Shooting phase. The bolt thrower will target the bloodletters in front of them, long range. And remember that the Furies are in the air, and so they do not block line of sight. And the bolt thrower fires and misses. Another long range miss. And then the quarrelers marched this round, so they cannot shoot. We'll move on to close combat. We start combat with the hammerers and the longbeards against the fleshhounds. So here's the striking order for this combat. The hounds will strike first with an initiative of 4, and then the Thane with his charge bonus. Following him will be the hammerers with their great weapons but also a charge bonus. And then last will be the longbeards with their great weapons penalty. But of course the hounds and the Thane will strike simultaneously. So the fleshhounds will have 7 attacks, and the champion, which is called a gorehound, he will direct his 3 attacks on his flank into the hammerers. So we'll start with him. So the gorehound throws his fangs and claws into the hammerers, and all 3 strikes make a hit. And then rolling for wounds, it's strength 4 against toughness 4, and the gorehound scores 2 wounds on the hammerers. Next, the hammerers have medium armor, thus they have a 5+ armor save. They roll to save those wounds and they score nothing. 2 final wounds will make it through on those hammerers. That will be 2 dwarf meals for that gorehound. Next, the other fleshhounds will strike into the longbeards. The weapon skill will be 5 against 5. And the fleshhounds roll and only score 1 hit of the 4. And then they roll for wounds and they end up scoring nothing. And so the longbeards avoid any casualties this time. Now all the fleshhounds are done striking. It's time for the dwarfs to strike back. First up will be the Thane, Rumar Trollbane. Rumar will have a total of 4 attacks due to his 2 hand weapons. He would normally have 3, and Rumar will have a slight weapon skill advantage over the hounds. He winds his double axes and lands 3 hits of the 4. Next, those 3 hits are rolled for wounds, and all 3 score a wound. 3 wounds so far. And now we'll let the hammerers attack. Due to base contact rules and accounting for the 2 slain hammerers, we counted 11 attacks from them. Hammerers normally get 2 attacks, at least those on the front rank. So they make their 11 hammer swings, and they hit 4. And then rolling with the great weapon strength bonus, they score 3 wounds of the 4 hits. So adding their 3 wounds to the Thane's 3 wounds, that makes 6 wounds from this unit altogether. And before we proceed with the longbeard strikes, the fleshhounds attempt to make these save rolls thus far. They end up rolling no armor saves and 3 ward saves. But that will not be enough to save this unit. 3 final wounds carry through, and that will finish off these fleshhounds. No need for the longbeards to strike, and no need for combat resolution. Both the hammerers and the longbeards will gain a +1 leadership bonus for winning this combat. And then neither unit will take advantage of the free reform. Next combat. The Slayers will continue their fight with fleshhounds. The hounds will strike first. The hounds roll 9 attacks, and they hit with 6 of them. Next they roll to wound, and they score 4 wounds. This could be trouble for the Slayers. They are going to need some 6+ parry saves in order to stay alive. And they would just need 1. So the Slayers roll and they score 0 parry saves. They will take 4 wounds, and that's all they have to give. They are wiped out. No chance to strike back. And the Fleshhounds unit will gain another leadership bonus. They choose not to reform, and they will be hunting for more dwarf meals. They have an unsatiable appetite. And the Slayers will go the way of the great feast tables under the mountain. This ends the dwarf's turn. Back to the Daemons. Daemons turn 6, and they declare a charge. The 4 Fleshhounds will charge into the Bolt Thrower. The dwarfs will elect to hold. This will be another long charge. So they roll and they fail. They don't make the charge. And in our club, when a charge fails, the unit only moves the highest die rolled, which was a 4 in this case. I'm not sure the charge could have been a success even with a 6. That was an especially long charge. Remaining moves. All other Daemon units march forward, both Bloodletters and the Furies. And since there's nothing in combat this turn, that will end the Daemon's turn. Back to the Dwarfs. The Dwarfs have no charges to declare. The Chaos Furies are in the air, therefore they cannot be charged by ground forces, even though the Dwarf Warriors are right there in front of them. Remaining moves. So the Quarrelers and the Bolt Thrower do not move, but all other units march. So the Dwarf Warriors marched underneath the Chaos Furies. That's something that they can do since the Furies are in the air. And then the Warriors may be heading for the last unit of Bloodletters. The Longbeards are also committing to the left flank. That side will need reinforcements after the fall of the Slayers. The Thane and the Hammerers are staying on the right flank, countering the Bloodletters on that side. Shooting phase. The Quarrelers aim at Claw and his Bloodletters, hoping to cut down on some of those poisoned Hellblades. They will get 11 shots, and they roll 7 hits, and then 5 of those hits score as wounds. And then rolling for their 5+ ward save, the Bloodletters save 1 wound, resulting in 4 final wounds upon the unit. That was a detrimental volley from the Quarrelers. The Dwarfs will also shoot the Bolt Thrower, aiming for the Fleshhounds. And this time they do hit and wound one of the Fleshhounds, and they are unable to save it. They are down to 3 hounds, but they are successfully taking the fire from the Bolt Thrower off of those Bloodletters behind them. But that will be the end of the shooting phase. No units are in combat. That will be the end of the Dwarf's turn. Daemon's turn 7. The Fleshhounds try again to charge into the Bolt Thrower. The Bolt Thrower holds. This time the Fleshhounds successfully make the charge. And then the crew of the Bolt Thrower rolls for their fear check, and they fail. They will have a fear penalty during this combat. That means that their weapon skill will be reduced to 1 during this combat. The Chaos Furies will also declare a charge on the Longbeards. The Longbeards will hold, and since the Chaos Furies are in the air and the Longbeards are on the ground, they have to perform a special type of charge maneuver. We call it a swoop. For the swoop maneuver, the unit starts off in the air and then swoops down to the ground unit with a one-off attack in both directions. And then they swoop back up into the air from where they started. But they swoop up from the opposite flank from where they attacked. And if the flying unit ever wants to attack again, they'll have to come around for another pass. Or they can just land on the ground for multiple rounds of combat, like any other ground attack. But they would have to land first and then charge on the next movement phase. So the charge distance for the swoop maneuver has two parts. First they roll M plus D6 for the distance to the front of the unit, and then once again M plus D6 for the distance that they swoop beyond the unit on the opposite flank. But in this case, the Chaos Furies attempt the swoop charge, and they successfully make it in. The Longbeards pass their fear check, and they will be in close combat for 1 round. And then the Furies will swoop back up. And for the swoop up, they scored a 7. But that movement will occur after the close combat. For remaining moves, both units of Bloodletters march forward. Combat phase. The Fleshhounds against the Bolt Thrower unit. The Fleshhounds will strike first, and they have 7 attacks. They end up scoring 4 hits, and then of those hits, only 1 of them carried through as a wound. So the Bolt Thrower is down a crewman. I think the crewman got lucky that time, but the 2 remaining get to strike back. But given that their weapon skill is only a 1, they miss all their attacks. Gripped by fear. Combat resolution. The hounds will win combat, and the crewmen will have to take a break test. They also lose a leadership, but the hounds have already maxed out their leadership bonus potential with 3. So the crew will have to test on a leadership 8. But they end up passing it. They will stick around for another round. They will swallow their fear and keep on fighting. Next combat. The Furies against the Longbeards. So just like with skirmishers, the Furies will have to bunch up for combat. And they will all get to strike. And they get to strike first. And the Furies manage 8 hits. And then they roll for wounds, and they score 2. And then the Longbeards try their 5+ armor save, and they miss them both. 2 Longbeards will perish. The Furies may be small, but there's many. And they have double attacks. But now the Longbeards can strike back. We counted 9 attacks from the Longbeards. The Longbeards swing. And all 9 attacks make hits. And then rolling for wounds, all 9 hits also make wounds. And then the Furies are unable to make any saves. 9 of the 10 will perish. Incredible axe work from those Longbeards. Maybe the Furies should have feared them. So 1 lone Fury will finish the swoop 7 inches beyond the flank of the target unit. And here we have another house rule. When a flying model dies in the air, we use the scatter dice to determine where each model will land on the ground. If any models are on the ground at the impact site, they must resolve the hit depending upon the size of the dead model. And those details are found in our club rule set. But in this case, all 9 Furies landed in open terrain and did not strike anything. Combat resolution. Despite a decent performance from the Furies, the Longbeards won with authority, 10-4. And just so you know, the 1 point under other for the Furies is by reason of them committing an aerial attack upon the Longbeards. So now the Furies will have to take a demonic instability test. And the Fury rolls a fail, and the unit is eliminated. The lone survivor will head back to the Dimension of Khorne. The Longbeards are ready for some more action, but that will be the end of the Daemon's turn, and we'll go back to the Dwarfs' turn. The Dwarfs open by declaring a charge. This will be the Dwarf Warriors into the Bloodletters at the top of the screen. And their target is the flank of the Bloodletters, and that will make it a longer charge. We measured the distance at 9 inches, so the dwarves will need to roll a 6 to make it in. And they roll and get not enough. They fail the charge and only make it 5 inches. Their surprise flank attack is foiled. Remaining moves. The other side of the table prepares to fight the other unit of bloodletters. The Longbeards march over that way now that the Chaos Furies are gone. The Hammerers hold and do not move, and then the Quarrelers pivot towards the Daemons. Shooting phase. The Quarrelers will target the bloodletters once again. This time their 11 bolts only make 4 hits, and then of those 4, only 2 go through as wounds. And then the Daemon's ward save roll produces 1 save. Only 1 final wound on the bloodletters that time, but that makes 5 that they've cut down altogether so far. And then the bolt thrower cannot shoot this turn because the crew is in combat. And the hounds will get to strike first again. This time there's 7 attacks, connect with 4 hits. And then 3 of those go through as wounds. And then the brave crewmen have nothing to stop those wounds with. They will perish. And with that, those flesh hounds have eliminated their second unit of dwarfs. They have successfully hunted and chewed down the entire left flank of the dwarf formation. How much more will they devour? But for now, those flesh hounds will take a free reform. And then our club has a rule that when a war machine perishes, whether it's destroyed or intact, it remains on the battlefield as an obstacle. So that is why the bolt thrower is still on the battlefield as you see here. And this will end the dwarf's turn. Both sides have taken some losses. The Daemons open the round with a charge. This will be Claw, the Herald, and his bloodletters into the Hammerers. They decide to hold, and their charge result is a success. They make the charge into the Hammerers, and they don't need to take the fear check. Remaining moves. The bloodletters on the other side of the field decide to reform in order to face the dwarf warriors. The fleshhounds choose a new target. They march full speed across the backfield. They are heading straight for the quarrelers. Combat phase. So Claw, the Daemon Herald, and 10 bloodletters with poison hellblades will fight the Thane, Rumar Trollbane, and his 8 hammerers. This should be a classic matchup. And to get things started right, Claw issues a challenge to Rumar, and Rumar accepts. They push their way through and face off. And Claw has the speed advantage and will strike first. He has 3 attacks, but remember that Claw also has the Locus of Wrath. That basically gives him hatred. So Claw swings and initially gets 2 hits on Rumar. But because of hatred, he gets to re-roll the miss. And with the re-roll, he reverses the miss. So that means all 3 attacks will come through as hits. And then of those 3 hits, 2 go through as wounds. And 2 wounds is all that Rumar has to give. But he can try some save rolls. He has medium armor, but he fails his armor save. And then he also has a parry save, but also fails the parry. He will suffer 2 wounds and will perish. He will have no chance to strike back, and Rumar's fall will come as a shock to his entire army. Now it's time for the units to attack, and the bloodletters will have the initiative. They will have 10 attacks with their poisoned hellblades. They end up landing 6 hits on the hammerers, and then 3 of those hits cut through as wounds. 2 of those wounds are made with the killing blow, so the dwarfs can only attempt to save 1 of them, but that attempt fails. All 3 wounds are final. The hammerers are taking heavy casualties, but they now get to strike back. Thanks to their double attacks, they get 11 to strike back on the Daemons. And they are able to hit with 9 of the 11 attacks. And then 7 of those 9 hits go through as wounds. So then the Bloodletters attempt 7 ward saves. And they end up scoring 2 of them. 5 Daemons are eliminated. So there was a lot of carnage on both sides of this fight. Let's look at the combat resolution. And it looks like the Daemons edge out the Hammerers 7-6. The charge bonus made the difference. The Bloodletters will gain a leadership and the Hammerers will lose one. And now before we move on, we must consult the Killed Leader reaction chart. This is another club rule that we came up with. It represents the reactions that the army can take when one of their leaders is killed in combat. And this is done at the end of the combat phase when that occurs. And when the army general is killed, each surviving unit must roll on this chart. So starting with the Quarrelers, they roll a 3 and immediately lose a leadership. The Longbeards also roll a 3 and lose a leadership as well. And then the Warriors, they roll a 2 and then they pass their fear check without any harm. So this will conclude the Daemon's turn, and now we'll go back to the Dwarfs. The Dwarfs begin this round with declaring a charge. The Dwarf Warriors into the Bloodletters. The Daemons will hold. Last time they failed, but this time they make it in. And the Warriors pass their fear check. Remaining moves. The Longbeards reform to face the Hammerers and the Bloodletters battle. And then the Quarrelers, they also reform, so as to face the Fleshhounds that are bearing down on them. But remember that the Quarrelers do not have a musician. Therefore, they could not do a swift reform and shoot. But that ends the movement phase, and there's no shooting phase. So we'll move on to combat. Starting with the Warriors against the Bloodletters. The Bloodletters will have the initiative again. The Bloodletters will get 11 attacks on the Warriors. And they manage to score 8 hits. And then 4 of those hits go through as wounds. And then the Warriors have light armor and shields. And they end up scoring 1 save. Therefore 3 final wounds on the Warriors. And now they get to strike back. They also have 11 attacks. They are able to make 5 hits. And then of those hits, all 5 go through as wounds. But then the Bloodletters are able to score 3 ward saves, so only 2 final wounds. Combat resolution. The Warriors end up winning 6-5. The Warriors will gain a leadership, and the Bloodletters will lose one. And then the Daemons will take an instability test and lose 1 more Bloodletter. The casualties are even thus far. Next combat. The Bloodletters against the Hammerers. And now that Claw has taken care of the Thane, he is back into battle with the unit. He will get to strike first. Claw has 3 attacks, and he ends up hitting all 3. And then 2 of those hits go through as wounds, but no killing blows. And then the Dwarfs are unable to save the wounds from Claw. 2 dead so far. But now the Bloodletters get to strike, and we counted 5 attacks. They roll for hits and they score 2. And then rolling for wounds, they score nothing. So 0 wounds from the Bloodletters. Let's see what the Dwarfs can do. But they are down to only 7 attacks. They swing their hammers and connect with 5 of them. But then only 2 go through as wounds, and then the Bloodletters are able to save 1 of those wounds. So only 1 final casualty among the Daemons. which was a bloodletter. Combat resolution. And the Daemons prevail 3-2. The Daemons will gain a leadership, and the Dwarfs will lose one. The Hammerers take their break test and pass. They stick around for another round, but they are down to their unit command. This will end the combat phase and the Dwarfs' turn. The Daemons open the round by declaring a charge. The Fleshhounds into the Quarrelers. The Quarrelers elect to hold, and the charge is a success. The Fleshhounds make it into combat again, and the Quarrelers pass their fear check, and that will end the Daemons' movement phase. And the Daemons will begin with the Hammerers fight. Claw throws his 3 attacks at the Hammerers. 2 of them land as hits, but then both of those go through as killing blows. The Dwarfs can do nothing to save them from slaughter. Only the unit champion is left alive. The Bloodletters try to finish him off with 3 eligible attacks. They land 1 hit, but then 0 wounds. The champion dodges death for now, but then he gets to strike back with his 2 attacks. He gets 1 hit on the Bloodletters, but then fails to wound. He is running out of steam and hope. Combat resolution, and the Bloodletters will clearly win this combat, 3-0. The remaining dwarf is down to leadership 7. But he rolls for his break test and passes. He stays in the fight, knowing that sacrificing his life might give the dwarfs some hope. But the Daemons do score at least on the banner and will go to the next combat. Next will be the battle with the warriors. The Bloodletters make their 11 attacks, and they get 6 hits. And then 5 of those go through as wounds, and 2 are killing blows. The warriors will have 3 5+ armor saves, and they score all 3. Only the 2 killing blows make it through. And then the warriors will make their 11 strikes back. They manage to hit 5, but then they score 0 wounds. Combat resolution. The Daemons will win combat 4-3, and that will neutralize the leadership balance from the last round. The warriors will take a break test on a 9, and they pass. This fight will go another round. And now the Fleshhounds and the Quarrelers. The Fleshhounds will strike first, and they will have 7 attacks. They end up scoring 5 hits on the Quarrelers, and then 4 of the 5 go through as wounds. The Quarrelers only have light armor, and thus they have a 6+ armor save, and they roll and score 3. 3 wounds are saved and only 1 goes through as a final casualty. So now they can strike back. They will have 11 attacks. Remember that they did take a champion, just not the standard or the musician. So with their 11 attacks, they score 3 hits, and then 1 goes through as a wound. And then the Fleshhounds roll to save it and miss. So 1 casualty on both sides. Combat resolution. Looks like we have a draw, 2-2. No break test for either side. But now we're down to 2 Fleshhounds against 14 Quarrelers. But that is the last combat for this round. Back to the Dwarfs. And the Dwarfs open the round with another charge. The Longbeards into Claw and his Bloodletters. Can they save the life of the last Hammerer? The Longbeards roll, and they easily make the charge. And the Longbeards pass their fear test. And that will end the movement phase. There's no shooting phase, so we'll move on to the combat. starting with the Bloodletters and the Warriors. And the Daemons will strike first as always, with 11 attacks. And they start off with 7 hits, and then they score 4 wounds, and 2 of them being killing blows. And then their 5+ armor save saves 1 of those wounds. 3 fallen dwarfs. And then the Warriors strike back with 11 attacks. They end up with 5 hits, and then 4 of those go through as wounds. The Bloodletters tried to save those wounds, and they scored 2. So 2 fallen Daemons. Combat resolution. The Daemons win 5-4. The Bloodletters are gaining momentum, and now the units are just about even. The Warriors passed their break test, and this fight will go on for another round. Next combat. The Quarrelers and the Fleshhounds. The Fleshhounds are down to 5 attacks. They roll and they get 2 hits, and then they score 1 wound. And then the Quarrelers prevent it with an armor save. Now they strike back. Due to base contact, the Quarrelers only get 7 attacks, but 4 of those do hits, and then 2 create wounds. The Fleshhounds try their ward save, and they score 1, so 1 final wound goes through on the Fleshhounds. Combat resolution. And the Dwarfs will win combat 3-0. The final Fleshhound will take an instability test, and he fails, and the result will be the loss of 1 wound. So the last Fleshhound disappears into the ether. The Quarrelers do not take a reform, but just a breath of relief. Over to the center battle. The Longbeards charged in to save the Hammer Champ. But Claw gets to strike first, and he will direct his 3 attacks into the Hammerer, trying to finish him off. He gets 2 hits, and then 1 of those goes through as a wound, and then a do-or-die armor save roll from the Hammerer, and it fails. The last Hammerer falls. Claw collects his quarry. Next to attack will be the Bloodletters, but they can only direct 1 attack into the Longbeards on their flank. That 1 attack hits, but then fails to wound. Now it's the Longbeards' turn. Due to base contact rules, the Longbeards get 6 attacks, and they manage to hit with 5 of them, and then rolling for wounds, they score 4. The Bloodletters attempt their ward save, and they only score 1. Therefore, 3 final casualties on the Daemons from the Longbeards' charge. Only Claw and the Champion remain, and since the standard is gone, they lose all their bonuses from Serpent Rock. But first, let's do combat resolution. And the Dwarfs easily win 6-1. That will force the Daemons to take an instability test. And they end up failing. And they will lose enough wounds for the unit champion and Claw to both disappear into the ether. That will be the end of Claw and his Bloodletters. Now only 1 unit of Daemons remains, and that's the Bloodletters fighting the Warriors on the Dwarfs' left flank. And as you can see, the Longbeards made a reform move after their combat with the Bloodletters. So this will conclude the Dwarfs' turn, and we'll go over to the Daemons' turn. The Daemons will only have a combat phase this turn. The Bloodletters will continue fighting the Warriors. They still had 11 attacks, and they managed to hit with 6 of them. But only 1 went through as a wound, and then the Warriors were able to save it with their armor save. So no casualties for the Dwarfs. But then the dwarfs strike back with 11 attacks of their own. They hit with 3, wounded with 3, but then the bloodletters save 2 with their ward save. 1 casualty for the Daemons. So the warriors win combat resolution 3-1. The bloodletters have to take an instability test, and they pass. Next round. The dwarfs decide to march their quarrelers and longbeards up towards the fight with the bloodletters. And then the warriors continue their combat with the bloodletters. But now the bloodletters are down to 10 attacks. This time they manage 7 hits. Only 2 of the 7 go through as wounds, but they are both killing blows from those hellblades. Their armor can do nothing to stop them. 2 more dwarfs will fall. But then the warriors strike back, and they still have 11 attacks. They only manage 2 hits, but both hits go through as wounds, and the bloodletters fail to save them. So 2 bloodletters also fall. Combat resolution. And this time the warriors edge out the bloodletters by 1 point. The extra rank of the warriors being the only difference. Now there's 10 warriors to 7 bloodletters. The bloodletters take their instability test, and this time they fail. And they fail big. 5 bloodletters will disappear into the ether. Now the warriors have a huge advantage moving into the next round. The last 2 bloodletters in combat will do what they can. If they can slay 1 more warrior, they will get half points from the unit. This is not over yet. This time they get 3 attacks, and they get 2 hits with those hellblades. And then both go through as killing blows. Once again, the dwarfs can do nothing to stop them. And now the warriors strike back, and they only get 7 attacks due to base contact rules. They score 3 hits, but then only 1 wound, and then the bloodletters cannot save it. The standard bearer will fall, but the champion will remain. Combat resolution. This time the fight is a draw. 2-2. No instability test. The champion is not done fighting. Now it's the dwarfs' turn. The quarrelers and the longbeards continue marching over towards the fight. Back to the fight. The bloodletter champ throws his 2 attacks into the warriors. And both attacks hit. And then one of them goes through as a wound. And then the warriors score an armor save, preventing the wound. Now they strike back. Only 5 attacks this time. They manage 2 hits, but none of them go through as wounds. No casualties on either side. Combat resolution. The warriors will win 1-0, forcing an instability test for the champion. He rolls and fails. He has had enough and disappears into the ether. The last Daemon is gone. Only dwarfs remain on the battlefield, and the battle is over. The dwarfs have the clear victory. Even though the dwarfs won, both teams played well, with some good back and forth on the scoreboard. But now let's get the final tally of the score. The dwarfs earned full points for each of the Daemon units. They also scored the bonuses for each unit standard, and also the bonus for the army general. They score a total of 1,150. The Daemons eliminated the Slayers unit, the Bolt Thrower, and the Hammerers, as well as the Thane. They also decimated the Warriors, earning half points for them. And then they earned the bonus points for 2 unit standards and the General, for a total of 687 points. The Dwarfs win by a margin of 463 points. The game seemed much closer than it looks like on paper, but this is currently how the league stands, with the Dwarfs taking first place so far. The next game will be the Dark Elves against the Wood Elves. Look for that coming up on this channel. And now I'd like to announce the MVP of the game, and that is the Dwarfs Longbeards. They were one of the last units standing at the end of the game. They helped fight off 3 different units of Daemons, starting with some ferocious fleshhounds that charged into their flank. They survived that surprise assault with no wounds. Next, they were charged by 10 Chaos Furies. A couple of old grumblers fell, but 9 axe swings yielded 9 dead Daemons. And then their calculated charge into the flank of some Bloodletters shattered the unit and sent Claw the Herald packing for home. On the Daemon side, I'd like to highlight the right flank unit of Fleshhounds. They single-handedly took down the entire left flank of the Dwarfs, starting with the Slayers, and then progressing on to the Bolt Thrower. This expendable unit was finally brought down by the Quarrelers in the backfield, but not without taking some damage themselves. The champion of this unit is named Ripper. He lived up to his name in this battle. His unit eliminated 15 Dwarfs, the most kills in the game, and that's also the highest in the league thus far out of the 2 games that have been played. Here's some additional stats on the Daemons team. Charge results. Magic. Close combat. And the killing blows number is included in the first number. And the dwarf stats. The charges. Shooting. And combat. This will conclude our battle report. Thanks for watching. Please leave us any questions or comments. You may check out our YouTube channel and our hobby blog at bonepileminiatures.com for more information on our club rules, army showcases and discussions, army background stories, and more battle reports like this one. Please hit subscribe and select all notifications on the bell if you wish to be notified when our next battle report drops. And we'll see you next time.